Hi, welcome. My name is Siwela. I am a 30-year-old biotechnologist by profession. I'm a winemaker and I'm also the founder at Siwela Wines. So if you're watching this video, I'm assuming that you want to learn a little bit more about wine, or perhaps you're just wondering, what is she going to talk about today? Well, I've got news for you. Today I'm going to talk about the Siwela MCC, which we know as a Méthode Cap Classique, the Chardonnay, and the Rosé. So this is our, well, I would say that it falls within our African Crown range at Siwela Wines. And this is a range that we've created basically, to embrace, not really to embrace, but, to really celebrate our journey at Siwela Wines, following the Lady Born to Inspire range, and really just to transition from where we started to, going up the ladder within the wine industry, representing what we do and really just having a great time doing it while producing great, phenomenal quality wines that are really accessible and that just easy soul drinking. It's the same for all of our wines, from the Lady Born to Inspire range to even the range that I'm going to talk about today. So hold on tight, and here is what I have to share with you. Obviously, I do that, always enjoying a glass of my favorite wine from my favorite selection, and I'm doing that today, enjoying a glass of the Siwela MCC, which is the Rosé. So there's a lot I'm going to talk about today regarding all these wines. Of course. So perhaps let me start from the scratch. We all know it in South Africa. Born and raised in South Africa, everybody talks about champagne, everybody talks about bubbles. We all love them, and whether you love it because you enjoy MCC, or you enjoy MCC because of the class that comes with enjoying a glass of MCC, it doesn't really matter. What matters the most is understanding where the whole tradition of MCC comes from. I'm going to share with you something that perhaps you've read somewhere, you've heard about it. If you're in the industry, you're probably, familiar with the whole story of MCCs in South Africa. So it all started with, well, I wouldn't say it all started with, but I know for a fact that, for example, champagne, we use a lot of that term around any wine that has got bubbles, which to me I think it's something that we need to think back about ourselves as consumers, as people in the industry, and really try to understand, do we really don't have so much inspiration from our local production in terms of bubbly? Because champagne is literally just the same as MCC. But as somebody who is also in the industry, I hardly ever hear anybody saying to me, I want to buy a bottle of MCC, right? So everybody just says, I want to buy a bottle of bubbles, I want to buy a bottle of champagne. So champagne is quite popular, more than even MCC. So I'm just going to take you through what MCC is all about. So if you really want to understand the concept of what MCC is all about, think about the same hype that revolves around champagne as it's MCC, which actually stands for Méthode Cap Classique. It just refers to a wine that is produced, or wine that has bubbles, produced in the same method as your champagne method. So that just tells you that the quality is somehow quite relative. The quality of champagne, we expect it to be just the same as the MCC. But now here's the trick. So MCC is a trademark, right, for South African bubbles that are produced in a second bottle method of fermentation, right? So champagne, as in like champagne in France and champagne the region, the wines that they produce as a method, in the same method that we produce our MCCs with, they call that champagne. Obviously it comes after the region champagne, and it's also their trademark. Now in South Africa, we've got our own trademark, which is MCC, Méthode Cap Classique, and obviously Siwela Wines is a member of the Méthode Cap Classique society. So something to drink for, take a sip for. Oh yes, did I mention that I am the owner of Siwela Wines? anyways, so now that you know what MCC actually stands for and why it's different and how it's different from champagne, so you might be wondering what makes the Siwela MCC so special. What is it, especially the MCC? Because if you look at it, we've got a sparkling wine that is just like a carbonated sparkling wine, but it's ranging from 120, and we're selling this MCC for 180. So you might be sitting there and wondering, is it about the packaging? No, 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 no. Our packaging is really just as genuine as possible and as simple as possible, because what we're trying to sell to you is not the packaging of the bottle. We actually just want you to experience the actual quality of the product, and you enjoying. We focus more on enjoying the wines that we produce. So we do our best to offer you a great packaging, but what matters the most for us as an organization or as a producing company is to produce wines with consistent quality, uniqueness, and accessibility. That's what we focus on. So what happens is, when you're producing, what makes the MCC so special is that MCC undergoes extra steps from your actual wines. So what you do is, when you're producing an MCC like a bottle of Siwela, you follow the standard procedure of producing any bottle of wine. This is produced using 100% Pinotage grape. So we love Pinotage at Siwela wines, but I mean, why wouldn't we? So you follow the same procedure as you were to produce a white wine using this, but obviously this is a rosé, so it gets this, this light salmon color from just minimum skin contact. So you might actually mistaken, I mean, I always feel like it has a little bit more of like, the white wine style category or characteristic more than an actual deep end, rosé wine. So that's what I think, but more than that, it's just a really great sparkling wine to enjoy, and I'll tell you why. So this wine gets produced when you're using the standard method of producing still wine, and after that it actually goes into a second fermentation which takes place inside the bottle, and this is the process that actually causes the bubbles to be produced, and that's what we want. We want to have the bubbles, and they get produced inside the bottle by inducing a second fermentation, whereby we're going to add a little bit of yeast inside the bottle of wine and a little bit of sugar, so that we can have a second fermentation that takes place without making it seem so complicated. That process actually produces bubbles, and those bubbles get trapped inside the bottle. But now the other interesting thing is that when the yeast cannot survive inside this bottle anymore, it actually dies, and it will settle at the bottom of the bottle. And if you've ever consumed champagne MCC, you would actually come across the word yeast, and that word refers to the dead cells, the yeast cells that would settle at the bottom of the wine. And that's actually what gives the wine that amazing champagne character, amazing MCC character, toasty notes, that yeasty notes that wine would probably have. But that's really amazing. That's just what makes MCC so great. And also obviously the method of maturation, in terms of like the duration, how long was it kept matured and in contact with these yeasty cells. So we kept this for 12 months minimum before we actually got it into the market, and before we actually removed the yeast, the dead yeast cells now. So as soon as, like you can imagine, the process takes a very long time. So as soon as we were done with that process of maturing the wine, we actually went into another process which involves the removal of the yeast cells. That's another process also that takes time, and that involves the whole procedure or the whole process in the cellar, therefore trying to remove the yeast and doing the riddling process, which allows for the wine or the sediments to basically get trapped at the top of the cap. So we would turn the bottles up until they are upside down, and then then after that we use a freezing solution to remove the sediment, and then we can prepare them for bottling, and they're not for bottling but for labeling, and therefore ready to enter the market. So but also I must say that the wine is a brut. So we don't add any sugar to it to make it taste any sweet, any sort of sweetness that you would encounter if your tongue or palate is that strong. It will be purely from the fermentation process. So the wine doesn't have any dosage, so we haven't added any sugar to sweeten the wine. So it's just really just like an extra brewed, if you were to call it, but it's a brewed wine. So it's a brewed Méthode Cap Classique. So if it's actually worth saying, I must say that, as you know, as somebody who has started this brand from the word go, you know, from the one bottle that I've heard, you know, with the support that I've received from the community, from my family, from, you know, the stakeholders within the wine industry, from wine lovers who actually purchased my wine, I would say that today I'm actually really excited as a very young woman, you know, yeah, from the north, who ventured into the wine industry or pursued her dream from the north to the west and now to the rest of the world, and having to be talking to you right now and being one and probably the youngest Méthode Cap Classique member within the Bubbly Production or Méthode Cap Classique Association. It gives me joy, and I hope that if you're watching this video and you know you find it a bit informative. But then again, I want to say that this is a beautiful bubbly to enjoy on a sunny day. You know, it's something that comes off as very alive. The bubbles are just very tiny, very persistent. You know, they come off, you know, numerous of them. They're just really alive, even in the glass, up until they hit your palate. And it's just so refreshing, especially when you serve the wine chilled. So you will enjoy so much about this wine. The other thing is it's very versatile. So it's something that you can try to enjoy with food, but you can also enjoy on its own. So I think this is, you know, one of those wines that you want to enjoy on a sunny day, or just on a good day like today, and you just enjoy yourself, whether you pair it with whatever tickles your palate, or you just really just enjoy it on its own. I think it's a go-to wine. So and a bottle goes for 180 rands, which for me I think it's really pretty much reasonable. It's good. What do they say? It's money, value for money. That's what it is. And yeah, so if you want to buy this bottle of MCC, Méthode Cap Classique, bubbly, whatever you want to call it champagne, you can visit the website www.siwelawines.co.za. You can DM and follow us at all social media platforms at Siwela Wines, and we actually deliver anywhere in this country, in South Africa. And also, if you are not in the country, like many other people, we can explore how we can get our favorite bottle of wine to you. And cheers.